do you want us to put the name tags on?
Okay, 6:30, I'm going to call the meeting to order. First order of business, it's 6:30 p.m. First order of business is item number 1 on our agenda is to review and approve the meeting minutes from June 1st, 2017.
I have read and reviewed the minutes, and I'll make a motion to accept them as written.
I have a motion to accept the minutes as written.
Second.
I have a second. Is there any further discussion on the meeting minutes? Seeing none, all in favor of approving the meeting minutes as written, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
I wasn't here.
I wasn't here, right, I wasn't here, so I can't.
So two abstentions.
No, two non-votes.
That's,
That's in the
Vic was teaching us that abstentions were the appropriate exercise of the last meeting. Anyways, regardless, that takes care of item number 1. Make sure you can sign the sheet down so Liz has it.
Oh, yeah, there's a list here, the slide vote down
Thank
there.
you.
Sign up, read.
So the second item on our agenda is committee discussion and dialogue with the current Board of Selectmen members. Of course, we have Chairman Fleming with us tonight. And as I said in the email ahead of this meeting, I'd like to make sure that each of the committee members gets a chance to ask 1 to 3 questions specifically about the acts of the town manager and how that has reflected on the first 6.5, 6+ years of being in place as we're going through this transition. So with that being said, I'm going to open up the floor to that discussion point, and I think I'm going to start to my left with Steve.
I have one question, which in my opinion is really the only relevant question that we should be concerned with, and that is there anything about the current act that as a selectman you wish were different, and if so, why?
I pulled before this meeting a number of different town acts through the Home Rule initiatives throughout the state, and they're all pretty consistent. There's very little variation to them. They all pretty much empower the town manager with the same authorities. I don't think the structure of the responsibilities of it, in my opinion, I think it suits the town well as far as the way it's written and how it's structured.
So for myself, the only thing I think I would like to have seen changed was that when we have elected boards, they have clerks, and there's a feeling that these clerks really only answer to those elected officials. I think there should be more clarity on they are town employees. They should, in my opinion, answer either to the town manager or to the Board of Selectmen, or make sure the board is following the bylaws, personal bylaws, the salary recommendations. Some of the committees seem to act very independently, and they don't follow the standards and practices of the building.
Do you see that as an issue with the way the act is worded, or is that outside of?
I think it's clarification. Are these clerks, members, are they town employees? And as town employees, do they answer to the overall town manager, or do they answer only to the elected boards or elected officials?
That's a point of clarity.
Yeah.
Because the present town act, the act presently does state throughout the act that only those members that serve under the authority of the Board of Selectmen. So what you're saying is you'd like to see that expanded?
Right.
Okay.
Expanded to include clerks?
Yeah, all town employees. I think, again, through my dialogue when I was a selectman, I think there is a view of being very independent as elected officials, and that my clerk answers to me only, and I don't think that's correct. I don't think the way it should be. So that's it. I think other than that, I think the authority of the manager is appropriate for all sides of the town. Did you hear the question, Jim?
So the question.
I did not.
The question was, in your experience with our town manager, is there anything in the Town Manager Act as it's currently written that you would like to have seen changed? And if so, why?
I don't see any that stands out right now, I really don't. Again, it's like this, I think what Ken was alluding to, it's very challenging with respect to what, what departments the town manager, is responsible for, and, the answer, to them. So it's very challenging with respect to, the independence, part of it, but nothing that really stands out.
So, Ken, if we were to change something, were you suggesting that the change would be something along the lines of committees report to the town manager, or just any committees like our committee where we have a town employees?
No, I think it's the employees, right, the employees. I think appointed committees, if they're appointed by another elected entity, they, their loyalty, not their loyalty, but their responsibility is answering the questions and fulfilling that charter that the other entity has filed. But as town employees, I think they fall under the town umbrella, and really the ultimate authority is either the board or the town manager.
So there are lots of committees that don't have town employees.
Right. So I'm only talking about the employees.
So only those committees where there's a town employee. What if the town employee is working as a volunteer on a committee?
I haven't thought that far ahead.
We have that situation.
Yeah, it's true. I think you have special employee status. But I was focusing on strictly people on the payroll. Right? But to make sure that their evaluations are done properly on time, to make sure that they are following the payroll rules and regulations of the town, to make sure they're getting all the benefits.
In their capacity of working on a committee.
As a clerk. As a clerk. So if you think of a larger corporation, in my capacity, I have a clerk that works for me. I have an admin. That admin falls under the corporation's requirements. She gets her direction from me, but she's really, a steward employee. So it has to follow the steward rules, and I can't make up, well, I'm going to do this because I think it's a better way. We all have to follow the steward organization, and the ultimate authority is the president of that site on that. That's it. I think it's more of that. That's my thought.
Could I comment? With all due respect to my friend, who I respect, I think there's a line where you have elected officials that have sovereignty as to how they run their department, and you would have conflict if the town manager were to, and for no Department X elected board has a clerk that works for them, to have that town manager go in and affect the responsibilities and the work of that clerk would kind of rub that sovereignty of an elected official. I think that would.
So let me be clear. I'm not talking about, no, I'm not talking about dictating the work of, I think that's the board or committee that this clerk works for, if they're elected, their work is directed by that committee. I'm talking about the payroll requirements, town policy. That should be really coming under the town manager. My admin, works at my discretion, but everything else is steward. And there's protocols and rules, and I can't circumvent that, even though, I feel like, well, I'm important.
Okay.
I think I am. Yeah, my daughter reminds me all the time.
Someone's keeping you in line, right?
Yes, oh yes.
Jim, you want to comment on that question? Was it?
I already did.
from a little bit of the side. Go back and forth. So, down
Sorry.
the-
Hi, guys. Thanks for being here. Mr. Fleming, can you just explain how much oversight and influence the selectmen have on the budgetary process where individual departments are concerned? You've been here with a town manager and you've been here without a town manager.
If I read your question, interpret it correctly, the town manager is responsible under the act for creating the budget. But that budget, the only one under authority through the Commonwealth, but through the town of Upton, that can affect the budget is the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen is empowered to bring that budget to town meeting. Despite what some people think, the Board of Selectmen do control the budget. Prior to a town manager, it was very sporadic because you had a part-time board, and there's a member here that served with me. It's very difficult when you're part-time to pull all the pieces together and create a budget. Once the town manager came in, we had a 5-year plan. We had a budget that was a process and a policy for the budget process was put in place, along with a timeline, everything else. Prior to that, the Board of Selectmen did it, and there weren't enough hours in the day to get it. Having a town manager to bring all that together, along with elected boards. Town manager would go to the planning board, the Board of Health, the treasurer collector, the assessors, and say, okay, I need your budget to compile it, put it all together. Then you had a consensus budget that was put together for the finance committee to be able to effectively review. So, yeah, the budget is one of the more important functions of the job, certainly not necessarily the most important, but a major function, and it requires quite a bit of time and input to do it correctly.
So in the new, with the town manager, would you say as the Board of Selectmen, you had limited oversight? You would just get a summary of?
No. I would take away the term limited oversight on anything. The town manager's authority is always through the Board of Selectmen. So the town manager brings that budget to the board, and the way it worked in the past, the town manager would bring a 3-ring binder with a composite of the budget, draft 1. We'd probably get to draft 7 or 8, and the board would keep going through it and go back to the town manager and say, okay, what's this mean? I'm not happy that I'm seeing a 9% increase here. What's this for?
Okay.
We need to define that. And along with that, there was a capital plan where each department had to justify any capital request. That also had to be approved by the board. So the board has the final authority. The town manager is putting the process in place. And
Right,
bringing it
because
to
Mr.
us.
Doherty said this year, with the interim town manager, you guys were able to meet individually, like the old days, prior to a town manager, you met with each board individually, getting the budget ready, because we had an interim.
That was always
We've
done.
always done.
That was always done.
No, right, but then we have a town manager who then meets individually with the board. So my understanding is now,
We always met with the individual committees.
but, so with the town manager, are you meeting with the fire chief, the police chief, let's say?
Yes, we did.
So you meet directly with them?
Yeah.
And then,
At a posted board meeting, the fire chief, police chief would sit right here at a posted meeting and present their budget to us as drafted by the town manager.
Correct.
And the department.
I
That's
think
the key
it's
term.
fair to say that the police chief, fire chief, or any department head probably sat down with the town manager in advance and they went through it. The manager probably said, you know, this probably isn't going to get by the board, we need to do something differently.
okay.
Right? You know, because when I was on the board the town manager had a lot of dialogue with us about the budget. So we would set our expectations with her. She would deal with the department head, and then the department head would always present the budget, as Jim said, at a public meeting.
So I think there could be, so then if it's just the town manager initially meeting with the department head, there could be, as opposed to meeting with the three of you first, where it was prior to 2008, then there could be some influence on certain things that go through and don't go through. I'm wondering if in the Town Manager Act, I know it makes it easier. I think it makes it easier that there's one,
If I may,
yeah.
the board sets policy. The first thing the town manager does is say, okay, what's our expectations? Example, 2 years ago, the board said we want a 0 increase. We actually want to reduce the tax rate. So you better tell the departments when they're coming in that this is what we expect for a budget. We want 0 level funding. So the town manager does the screening with the departments. Then once that process, it's all assembled, it comes before the board. We then interview each department head, and we tell them whether we like or don't like the budget. And 9 times out of 10, we will send something back to be readdressed, to be rewritten. And again, it's not, the budget isn't submitted blind. It has to be, there is considerable backup to any request, especially if it's capital, but even payroll, anything gets challenged. And the town manager's process is to create the semblance of all this information, put it all together. The final results sit on the Board of Selectmen's decision. So what the town manager is really doing is alleviating the board from going out and pulling all that data in. And we get a semi-finished product brought to us.
So I'm going to add for a minute. I think for the 3 years I served without a town manager, with a manager, there was much more transparency, much more information provided to us that we could understand and digest. In the past, we'd have our individual meetings. Oh, this is what I need. Well, give me some data. Oh, I didn't bring it. I think with the manager, all that preparation, she made sure all that done was done. So when they came before us, we had facts and figures which we could look at and say, now I understand what you're asking for. Where in the past, it's like, believe me, this is what I need. And I don't think that's a good way to run it up.
And in creating the draft budget, when we would meet individually with the town manager, they would bring up to us, I don't want to use the word red flags, but I'll just use the police chief, for example. You know, say Mercedes just came out with a new cruiser that he would like to buy for the town of Upton. So, you know, they would say to us, the chief wants to put forward this new Mercedes cruiser, and I would say individually, I don't think so. You know, we're okay with the others. I said, but in your conversations with the other selectmen, just let them know. So they would, you know, let us know issues while creating the draft. So we would be in constant communications during the draft document, and then once we had the draft document in front of us, we would, you know, the department heads would present it to us, and we have it in advance, so we would look at it, and then most of the time, as Bob said, it would go, we would send it back and say, we don't like this number, we don't like this, and just work.
So you still feel like you had enough influence over the process prior?
You cannot create a $21 million budget on a part-time basis.
I think another thing that was nice about the manager, coordinating or collating all the information is that we finally had a 3-ring binder that had all the information. It was all in one spot. It was with tabs, organized with tabs. It's a fetish of mine. It was very well done. It made it much easier to go through the budget process and understand what was going on. It was very clearly done, very well organized. Which I love these 2 guys, but we couldn't do that. Professionally, we could not. Sorry, Bob.
Question? Yeah, just go all 3.
Oh, get through all 3?
Yeah, we'll go back and forth.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, not related to that.
I don't have another finance question.
Oh, the finance, okay. So this is in regards to, you know, you said that you were all fine with the way that the act is worded and didn't think that there was anything that needed to be changed. We've read through it and looked at just a few things that might want to take a look at changing. And one thing I wanted to get your feedback on is this is in section 4, and it is P, under section 4, letter P. Serve as arbitrator of grievances and chief union negotiator for all collective bargaining agreements under the jurisdiction of the board. The board for from time to time may provide advice and guidelines to the manager. The board shall retain the authority to execute the union contract agreements. So something like that, you know, gives all authority except for the authority to execute union agreements. The board retains that, but gives the authority to the town manager for arbitrator of grievances and collective bargaining. So we just would look at rewording that so that it doesn't appear to give all the authority to the town manager, and say work in conjunction with the personnel board and its bylaws to arbitrate grievances with final say coming from the board.
To comment on that, first of all, I'd say emphatically every town manager act in the state of Massachusetts has the town manager responsible for collective bargaining negotiation. It's a function of a town manager. The town manager, the authority is not relinquished. The Board of Selectmen is the only one that can enter in contract, which are bargaining
Right, which
union
we
negotiations.
kept that one.
Correct.
Yeah.
But a town manager, part of their qualifications is to have background and experience either through a master's in public administration or experience in collective bargaining. I don't want to demean anybody, I have to be candid, but a member comes into the Board of Selectmen, has no experience and no background in collective bargaining. Do you want that person to go bargain with the Teamsters Union versus having a professional do the bargaining? Now, the parameters are set. Example, I just, under the Education Reform Act, worked with the regional district on the teachers' collective bargaining. And that again has a process where the superintendent of schools is responsible for the bargaining. The school committee is participants, but the superintendent is responsible. That would be, I would think, a mistake. And also, with all due respect to the personnel board, the same reason. You need to have somebody that is a professional trained to do the bargaining. You're dealing with people, i.e. from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, unions that will bring in bargainers from the state that represent these unions. And these people are very well experienced in bargaining. You certainly want to have somebody on Upton's side of the desk that has that experience and talent to do it. I have, over many, many years, seen collective bargaining done in this town, and I certainly feel that the Town Manager Act has really enhanced that process.
I have a quick follow-up question to that, just out of curiosity, just to make sure everybody on the board understands. But on all the collective bargaining agreements or any other kind of negotiations, did the board participate with the manager, or is the manager doing that individually?
The town manager does the bargaining, then we go in executive session at every phase of the bargaining. Town manager explains to the board, here's where we are, here's what the union's looking for. Based upon what the Board of Selectmen give as input, the town manager bargains for that. They are bargaining, they aren't making the decision. So let's say it's compensation. The town manager would say, the union is asking for this, you asked me to go for that. Here's where we are at that point. Do you want to move? Do you want to bargain to that, or do you want me to stay where I am? And if the board says stay where you are, the town manager follows the board's request. So the board is actually the decision maker. The town manager is doing the process.
Right. And
Does.
that's what we wanted it to reflect. We wanted it to reflect that.
It does.
It does.
It says it clearly in the law. It says the Board of Selectmen have the final authority. In other words, the town manager can't make a decision bargaining without the Board of Selectmen's authority. That's why you go in executive session for the town manager to get the approvals to do that.
How many people on the committee have negotiated a union contract or contract through a town organization or a school committee? Raise your hand. So that, I mean, that's the way it works in the community. Either on school committee, I've negotiated teachers' contracts, and I've also negotiated police contracts and other contracts here in town. And the bargaining committee is essentially, town manager sits down with the two sides, sit down and negotiate but nothing happens until the full committee.
We are constantly
They're-
informed.
They vote on it. In other words, they sit down as a committee and say, okay, this will work for us, and then they go to then they sign the contract or agree to
In
sign.
executive
In
session.
exec,
We are
well,
constantly and continually
Yeah.
informed on how the process is going.
nothing goes forward without the board of selectmen.
Yeah.
And if you read the acts of the Commonwealth, again, and for candor, I wrote this act, so I'm very familiar with it.
Yeah.
The one we
Aware.
have, and when that was written, I did a lot of research, and I can't think of an act in the Commonwealth that does not have the town manager.
Okay, no,
And
no,
in some
that's,
cases, the administrator,
Yeah.
doing the bargaining.
The only thing that the selectmen lost is the nitty-gritty, the everyday, in the trenches, fighting with the union or whoever the employees are.
We
This
prefer to
is
say
what-
negotiate with the union.
Well,
It's not always.
it's always in the fight. The first contract here was 3 years. We spent so many hours in the room downstairs that some of us didn't want to run the selectmen anymore. It's a time-consuming thing. What the selectmen have done, which is a wise thing, they let the town manager do the trench fighting.
yeah, no,
I
no.
guess the only question I would have, to your point, you've talked about looking at civil acts. We've done the same thing. We brought together some reference materials from a couple of communities. One's a charter community. Another community is a special acts community that's going through the process as we speak. The town of West Newbury is moving through a special acts as we speak to go to the town manager. In both of their acts, I know that they don't specifically name their town manager as the chief negotiator, but they do clarify that they see that as a responsibility of that.
Okay. Well, it's,
So I think there are some examples, and there's some language where it basically says that essentially that the selectmen can retract that responsibility. So where ours is written very clearly that no matter what, it's gonna always be the manager, whoever's in that role, until we can move forward. So I guess the question I would raise to the follow-up to this, the discussion that's happening is, do you have a situation where the language gives board members the flexibility to do it either way? I think everybody agrees that it makes sense for the manager to be in that role because they're a trained professional negotiator. I guess that was an example.
Yeah, I don't know what you're asking. Are you asking for an individual board member?
No,
No, I
they,
was asking for the language of the acts. So in some instances, the way our acts is written, no matter what, the town manager is the chief negotiator. There's a couple
Yeah,
other.
the town manager will negotiate and work in partnership with the board of selectmen. You know,
But-
I mean, which is what we do now, which is what they do now.
but you always need to have the final
Right.
say.
we do.
Correct.
Okay.
And I prefer to have a seasoned veteran out there doing the
You know,
hard
so
work for us.
to your question, I was not questioning
Yep.
using that person. I guess the question was in the enabling language, because really, in the case of any community, your acts are essentially just your enabling language of how you're administratively going to have your manager or your governmental leaders lead the community. So there are some language differences in a couple of, like that, for example, and the charter, we've looked at the town of Groton's charter, which is a community that did their change through a charter, a 43B charter. At the same time, Upton did it through a special acts. So there are some language differences where it gives the elected board of selectmen a little more latitude. So I guess the question is, am I splitting hairs on that comment?
Yes, to be honest.
Or do you have a situation where you?
No, because basically, if an act of the Town Manager Act states that the Board of Selectmen have final authority, the town manager negotiates with consensus with the Board of Selectmen, or it's understood the town manager negotiates, town manager's still doing it. The process in everyone I know of, the Board of Selectmen always has final authority, because you are entering a contract, and the only ones that can sign the contract for the town are the Board of Selectmen. So you would always have that caveat in there regardless of what the language is. Only the Board of Selectmen can enter a contract. So
That's
if,
really the salient issue is whose signature is on the contract.
Correct.
And it's always going to be the
but
selectman.
so,
So, you know, whoever sits down and negotiates really has to negotiate in good faith through the eyes of what the selectmen think. So they're really just, the guy shows up to me, the final agreement is signed by the Board of Selectmen.
I did have one more
Yeah, go ahead.
related to that. Okay. And then under the same section 4, letter I, be responsible for the administration of personnel and personnel matters, including the personnel bylaws, files, and all personnel policies that the board and the town may adopt. Such responsibilities shall include the enforcement of personnel policies, rules, and regulations, and managing personnel costs such as salaries, benefits, overtime, and use of town-owned vehicles for employees under the jurisdiction of the board.
Okay.
So we looked at that one as one that we might want to reword a little bit.
Specifically how? What's your question?
For example, be responsible for the administration of personnel matters, including personnel bylaws and all personnel policies the town may adopt. Responsibilities shall include consulting the board and personnel board in implementation and enforcement in all actions and regulations and managing personnel costs such as salaries and benefits, overtime. So including consulting the board and the personnel board, not just acting.
So what you want to do is reduce the authority of the town manager to the personnel board?
I'm sorry,
Reduce the authority of the town manager to the personnel board? So that...
not reduce, but have checks and balances.
I'll give you an example. You have an employee that serves under the Board of Selectmen's authority, town manager manages. In order for that town manager to set a salary recommendation for that employee, they have to get the personnel board's approval. That is the process personnel board recommends, but it doesn't say approval. It's the same way the finance committee recommends, doesn't give approval. So if you go farther and say that the personnel has to authorize or approve, you're basically stripping the town manager from the ability to manage their personnel.
You're also removing the authority from the Board of Selectmen.
It actually, the rewrite was consulting with, right now there's consulting with the Board of Selectmen and the Personnel Board, which as written, there's no consultation at all with you or the Personnel Board. It's just the town manager, the strong act that we adopted is the person that does it
So
all,
I'd ask the
without
question,
your consultation, so.
why do you want to weaken the town manager's authority to manage?
It's an all-encompassing, including administration of any kind of personnel matters, not just salaries, not just.
So you're reducing the town manager's ability to manage. I'm
Well, we
confused.
don't, the townspeople don't get to elect a town manager. The town manager is appointed, but we get to elect you selectmen, who then carry the vision of the townspeople to the town manager. Under this act, the town manager, it's a very strong act in personnel terms, and so the town manager has a lot of authority over the town, including the current selectmen who were elected by the townspeople. So to lessen it a little bit so that there's more
Balance.
more checks and balances from the townspeople, from you guys, from
The
elected
townspeople
boards.
don't need to have
Excuse me.
day-to-day
Can she
involvement. I understand, I understand.
I'm asking, let her ask the question to the selectmen. Thank you.
Well, she asked the question, I'd respond. Maybe we should have the chief of police go to the personnel board every time he wants to make a change, because he doesn't report directly to the voters either. I mean, you restrict management. You are taking somebody and putting them in the job and asking them to perform a function, and then you want to restrict the authority. So if you want to reduce the authority of a town manager, how do you ask them to manage when they don't have control?
Well, there are town manager acts that are not, that are a weaker town manager act, that where there is more consultation based on each point versus it's the end, the buck stops with the town manager. A lot of these, the buck stops with the town manager. We want to add the consultation, well, and it just does not allow for as much checks and balances if the wheels start going off the bus. And, you know, and even for you, even for the selectmen, you are elected to, again, to push the town, continue to push the town forward, and you have someone in for 3 years, maybe that vision isn't being promoted as you want it to be. I don't know. I mean, it seems like there was just a lot less consultation and checks and balances with the public and with the selectmen prior to having the.
Okay,
So if I may.
And I think you guys have been on both sides, so you
I have to get this point out.
add good value.
You're of the sense that the people have to have a voice in the actions of the town manager. The people elect the board of selectmen that manages the town manager, that manages the town. That's how the process goes. If you start to weaken the authority of a manager, they will be ineffective to manage. That's simple. It's just that way. And I would politely challenge your comment that there are other acts in the Commonwealth that have a town manager lessened authority. As a matter of fact, ours is not as strong as some others. There are many where the town manager has even greater latitude and authority. But the town manager cannot act on anything without the Board of Selectmen's approval. And if the town manager doesn't perform, the Board of Selectmen have the authority to take action. That's very clear. So the people elect us to make that decision. And, you know, people hate to hear that. They go, well, you know, you elected us to do it, so that's why you elected us. I'm sorry.
So I want to make 2 points. One is going back to my earlier comment about the authority of the manager, how I do want to ramp it up a little bit when it comes to, this applies to that. I'm looking to give the manager more authority, other entities, which is the opposite of what it sounds like you want to do. So on the second point is, you're asking for consultation. Donna, I'd like to have your opinion. Thank you very much. This is what we're going to do. So the consultation means nothing. You know, if you're asking, I want to have my input, we hear it, but we may not act on it. So does that make it less valid? I think we're still hearing input from everybody about things. So if you want to have your opinion validated and acted upon, that's different as in consultation.
Well, so does a buck stop with the town manager, like in?
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I thought everybody was going to get a chance to ask a question as opposed to having a dialogue that's going to take the entire evening before everyone gets to ask a question. Could we move forward?
I would just like to clarify one thing first.
You're next,
So is it fair to say that anything and everything that the town manager did, because we've had one town manager, the Board of Selectmen were on board with, because the buck stopped with the Board of Selectmen when it comes to the town manager?
Yes.
I'm going to not disagree with that, but you have 3 members, it's a vote amongst the 3.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
So there may be one who's opposed to something.
Right,
the
but
other
I
two,
mean,
so
but there was.
as an entity. the
So
manager did
anything
not
and
act
everything,
independently.
personnel, look, because I was talking specifically about this personnel part, but everything and anything related, the Board of Selectmen, because it's under the jurisdiction of the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen was fully aware of, on board with, and she had their authority.
The town manager, we don't specifically mention.
I'm sorry,
the role.
the town manager
We're working very
had,
hard as a committee to stick to
was
that.
working under the authority
Yes.
of the Board of Selectmen.
We may have had a difference of opinions. Again, we work as a board, that's what.
But you-
We may have had a difference of opinion, we work as a board. But again, so we vote as a board, but we were always informed with respect to the decision that was being made.
But you would have to agree to it.
We would.
Majority vote.
Majority.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
And
okay.
the final thing that supports that argument is the Board of Selectmen does an annual evaluation by law. We're required to do an open session of the town manager. And annually, we vote in session
Yep.
to adopt an evaluation of the town manager that's public record.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, you guys don't always agree. I mean, select, can't imagine select.
If the 3 of us agreed, there would have been an issue. And
Alan,
Why don't we just go a straight line down, if you don't mind?
no,
Let's do
don't go
forth.
back and forth for,
The role of the town manager has delineated tasks. You are the appointing authority for that manager. In my eyes, it's no different than the police chief, the fire chief, the building inspector, what have you. Do you feel that the responsibilities delegated to this person are sufficient, or do you feel that they need to be changed in the current act, which I think is similar to what Steve asked you, but that is really the only question, at least from this chair, that really is the question of the night.
So are you saying with respect to appointment, with respect to their,
Responsibilities of the town manager are delineated within the act. Thank you. Okay. Do you understand what I'm asking?
one more time?
Okay. The Town Manager Act identifies what responsibilities the town manager has with regard to the town.
Yep.
You appoint that person.
Yep.
You, in your role as a selectman. In your experience with the act, is there anything that needs to be changed? Or are you comfortable
My
with the
opinion is no.
responsibilities
My
that are
opinion is-
given to that role?
My opinion, the answer is no.
Thank you. No other questions.
Scott?
In the fear of sounding a bit redundant, is there anything in this act that is, doesn't give enough power to the town manager or gives too much? Is there certain areas where you felt like you would have rather been more involved with something, where in the past you would have been involved, like the whole board would have been involved in a situation? Or is there something that you feel as though you were involved that you shouldn't have been involved in?
If I may speak, you know, I always joked around when I came on board that I was the spoiled one coming on board 7 years ago, because I don't know what it's like to be a selectman without a town manager. And I don't know if I'd want to. I really don't. Because the role and the commitment that I played as a selectman was, just ask my family, very time consuming. And we had a full-time town manager here. So I have no idea how these gentlemen and gentlemen before, and ladies before, did it without a town manager. The communication is key. And I felt as if that we had good communication between the town manager and the board. Yes, we disagreed. Yes, you know, we had great conversations and sometimes very hard conversations. But again, it was a team, and like I said, I consider myself the spoiled one because I have no idea how selectmen in the past, men and women, did it without a town manager, especially the commitment that it takes. And so I think the authority is prudent the way it's written, and I think what's key is communication between the town manager and the board, and I think that, again, given the boards, it's a two-way street. You know,
So that seems to be a common theme with some of the other people we've talked to about communications. Is there anything that you think could be put into an act to improve that communication? Or is that just strictly something that's human nature and it takes an effort on behalf of the
communication is a
board?
two-way street. Communication is a two-way street. I know, you know, when I came on board 7 years ago, you know, when I started, my two veterans pushed me to say, you've got to meet with the town manager more. And they said, you know, just to make sure you're in the loop, to make sure you're communicating. And so the selectmen, you know, the veterans and the new have to, you know, work with the town manager. The town manager have to work with the board of selectmen. The communication is a two-way street.
To follow up, and it is in the act, it does state that the town manager has to keep the board apprised of all activities and policies and ongoings of the town. It's written right in there. The way it usually works is a selectman, and I'll speak for the present board now, we all have times where we go in and sit with the town manager, and it's a briefing. And it's, with me, it's always, it's not always, but it's usually in the beginning of the week and then the end of the week. So usually, sometime on a Tuesday or a Monday, I'll go in. Town meetings, selectmen's meetings Tuesday night. So usually there's a review of that, and then the end of the week before the weekend. So I get roughly 2 to 3 hours briefing a week from the town manager. So it's written there. The town manager has an obligation to keep the board informed. And believe me, there's a lot going on. So it lasts well over an hour with all the different activities and things taking place. So that communication does exist. And, you know, if a selectman doesn't want to seize that opportunity, they're elected, you really can't force them to, but I find that most selectmen definitely embrace it as staying abreast of what's going on, knowing all the activities in the town. That town manager is the eyes and ears of the board when we're not here. And again, we are only a board when we are in session. We have no legal authority outside of a meeting. The town manager does. And years ago, if we had a disciplinary problem, we had to post a meeting, wait 48 hours, go in executive session, deal with the issue, then go into open session to take action on it. This way, a town manager has the authority to take action within a very reasonable amount of time and correct a problem, improve it, do what's necessary. And then after that, the board is consulted. Here's what's happened, we had this instance, this was done, etc. So
So you're saying it's more efficient, you think, to deal with human resource issues
definitely.
than the practice was before?
I won't put words in your mouth, but you recall the restraints of the open meeting law when we had to act. We had to post, and it delayed our ability. Decisions weren't made when they should have been made faster. And it could be something DPW director says, I need an answer. Well, we can't do it unless we're in a session. So we post the meeting, 48 hours would go by, we'd all scramble to get down here, we'd make the decision, then it would go back. So it was really 3 days before any action was taken.
So what you're saying is that the efficiency of managing the town,
Oh, yeah.
that timeframe was short as a result of
Definitely.
having a town manager. Because having gone through, personally gone through the management, when we had to deal with personnel issues, that you could never respond quick enough to satisfy the situation. It was always after the fact.
But it even goes beyond personnel issues. And I'm gonna give you
Oh, no,
a prime example. When we were, didn't have a town DPW director, right? We didn't have one. I'm on the board, and the chair at the time was acting as the DPW director, which was a blessing. We had a generator, emergency generator fail at one of our pumping stations. As an individual, I had no authority, right? So we had to call an emergency meeting of the board. It took 2 days to get everybody, 2 of us to get together. So in the meantime, the town is without emergency backup power to operate that pumping station. So having a manager, someone on site who can make that decision and say, we need to do this, has that authority. And then with consulting the board, we'll update the board on this is what had to be done, this failed, and we need to move forward with that. The open meeting law with a board at times is great for transparency, but when you need to act efficiently and quickly, it can be a hindrance.
And then one final question, is there anything in here that hamstrings the Board of Selectmen? The Board of Selectmen.
My opinion, it's clear in every one that the Board of Select, power to hire and fire is a 14-day waiting period. The budget has to be approved through the board. Contracts are approved by the board. I don't know,
I can't think of it.
no.
I really can't. I mean, I can't see where we would. It's one of those things where I think it's written, you worked through it for 7, 8 years, you got to see it's working through multiple contracts, through multiple departments. Was there anything you said, where the town manager could hold up an act and say, well, it says right here, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and you as a board are like, yeah, we didn't intend that to happen?
A smart employee probably wouldn't tell their boss that.
And we were limited.
Just a point. You do their evaluations, so defiancy, I don't know. I mean, we can't get publicly disclosed this, but there have been many instances where a town manager could get overruled by this board.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. It's good to hear. I think one of the things I want to reinforce to everybody on this committee is very unanimous about, and I don't want to expand or sell on, and I'm not trying to cut short, but I think everybody in this committee is very, very supportive of the town manager, moving forward with town manager. I guess one of the things that, as we go forward with more questions, we're trying to zero in on, is there something that can be done better? So I don't know too many organizations, businesses, governments that are saying, oh, we're splitting this great for 7 or 8 years, and I don't change anything. But I guess we're trying to dig a little bit to, where are the changes? Where are the things that maybe didn't get thought through quite as much? So with that point, I will go back and I will turn it over to Debbie.
Okay. My question, Scott actually took one of my questions,
Sorry.
but mine is also related sort of to personnel disciplinary action. Right now it says no appointment, disciplinary action, or termination shall take effect within 15 days of notice being provided to the Board of Selectmen. Okay. So Dan and I are working for the DPW. We are at the cemetery, we're digging ditches, and we get into an argument. And the argument gets physical. And he and I are just, you know, rolling around in the ground. The DPW director finds out about it. Given these parameters, what does the town manager do under these parameters? A DPW director is going to call, I assume, the town manager and say, I got 2 employees who just went at it in the cemetery. What do I do? So now what does the town manager, what is he or she empowered to do?
The only thing they can do is contact the Board of Selectmen, schedule a meeting, or deal at the next meeting. Everything, I would say, the only thing that could be done would be to put on a suspension with pay, remove the employees until time a decision can be made. It's hard because you can't give up that 14 days. If you surrender that, then the board has no recourse. And the board wants to keep authority over the personnel and the hiring and firing and disciplinary actions. So we talked earlier about having to take action and post a meeting. Kind of like that exists. There is a little latitude where the town manager can go to the department head and say, you know what, send them both home with pay. I'm not taking action other than dealing with the management, but the board we will convene with the board, and there'll be an executive session that will be dealt with at that point.
Mr. Chairman, may I actually state what would happen practically to the fact pattern that you just gave? If there was a physical altercation between you and Dan, I suspect that the police chief would do an investigation. He would arrest whoever he felt was at fault, and I think actually the district court judge here in Milford would actually clarify that by perhaps to the victim giving an order of stay away from the person who is at fault for that particular fight. That's what would happen in your situation, and then it would be dealt with.
Would they continue to go to work the next day?
But if stay away, there would be a stay away ordered. And yes, if in fact the district court judge felt that this person who, let's say, probably it's going to be Dan, that Dan should stay away from you because he was the aggressor, that's what would have to happen. It would supersede, honestly, whatever municipal government is saying, whatever the district court judge ordered to calm the situation.
Somebody would have to tell the employees they're dismissed for the day, go home. There has to be some process.
Right.
The police could do the
Something has to
investigation, but until separate the problem first, and then it would be dealt with. Certainly the police are
Yes,
called in.
there's a separate police action, sure.
If it's a shouting match and they're calling each other names of obscenities or a racial slur or something like that, then it becomes a matter of, okay, you're both going home with pay. This is going to be dealt with. There's going to be a disciplinary file. The other thing is, with any disciplinary hearing, the person's got to be entitled to their right to be represented. There's the whole process that takes place, so it's very cumbersome to deal with. Those are the worst ones you can get, because everybody has to be represented, and you can't bring somebody in executive session without right to attorney or whatever.
So the employees,
Again, we would ask the town manager to get all the facts, get the witness statements, you know, was there any witness statements? There's always 2 sides to every story. Truly collect all the facts, work with the police chief to see, you know, is there any restraining order needed, is there any stay away notice that's needed? Again, collect all the facts, and then once we have all the facts and the witness statements, then we need to discuss, working with the chief and any legal authorities, you know, what the course of action is. And of course, in all the facts, we'd want to know, you know, who won the fight between you and Dan. We'd want that, you know.
and so the employees could be suspended with pay until this 15-day notice, whatever.
She's managing the employees. So.
Just for a minute though, so going back to my earlier conversation on who has authority, that person suspended in pay is somebody who falls under town manager's authority. So if it is another committee, it adds another level of complexity to it.
Sure.
Right, so that's why I'm going back to, everybody should answer to the town manager. So if anything like this happens, okay, you're dismissed for the day with pay until I have a chance to talk to the selectman or someone else to figure out what's gonna happen. Right now, I can see the contest going on, well, they don't work for you, I'm not sending them home.
Right, exactly.
So,
Okay.
I think that's an issue.
The other side would be, and we've had this happen, unfortunately, an employee is disciplined to the point of, you know, progressive discipline, it's time to let the employee go. The town manager then consults with the board and says, I want to terminate this employee, I want to go forward, I need your approval, and that process is a lot slower.
So when does the town manager approach you and say, we're moving along the discipline process with Joe Smith?
In an executive session only.
But at what point? When there's a written warning or a?
Well, no, the
Is
town, oh, I see what you mean. Where in the progressive
Yeah,
discipline?
where do you
Town
do it?
manager in the briefing would say, John Q. Public, we're having a problem here. I've disciplined to this third point. If
Okay.
it happens again, I'm going to ask the board to come in executive session, and we're going to have to deal with it. We have to be very careful about this, everybody's rights.
Right, yep.
So, and then that employee would be invited in the executive session. The board, probably in all likelihood, if it's correct, would waive the 14 days, because it doesn't have to go 14 days. It means we
Doesn't.
can waive that.
So you could waive
We
it?
waive it and say, okay, take action, and that's happened in the past.
Oh, I think it says that, yeah. Okay, all right. Second question is the performance evaluation. Do you go through the act, you know, as you're preparing for the evaluation of the town manager as to whether this person has fulfilled
Oh,
the
yes.
duties that are in this act?
Yep, you can see them. It says there are goals set in the beginning of the year, and he loves this, so I'll let him go.
Goals.
There are goals set in the beginning of the year, then the town manager for each one of those goals is measured. And there is an evaluation, they're rated good, very good, or a numbered weighting, and we have to do it publicly. It's done in public session. It's
Do any-
public record.
Do all departments or department heads contribute to that?
No.
So there's no
Not
feedback, you don't get
No.
feedback from other
So,
people?
let me
Not
answer.
directly. Yeah, see, I told you.
So I can't speak for my other board members, but I talked to every department head when I was evaluating the town manager.
Okay.
Every one of them.
I'm not saying you have to take their feedback, but
Well,
at least
you
get
ask
it.
it for a reason,
Right.
right? So I went to every department head and asked for feedback. We initially, on our first evaluation, we purposely did this way. We took every bullet point in the Managers Act and graded it that way. Well, there's
Oh.
27 points. It came very, they were repetitive. So we morphed to a more standardized, I think there's 7 categories about leadership, management, situational response, and that sort of thing.
Is that document a public document?
Yep,
That
absolutely. Public
Annual
record.
performance, so you could ask the
Every year it was
town
done,
clerk
every
for
year
it?
at the first of the year or the end of the year, like everybody else, it was done.
Okay. That's it for me.
I would encourage anybody to read it if they haven't read it.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was public, I didn't know it was
No, it
public,
is.
so
Public.
that's good information.
The town manager, does the town manager have any more power than the board of selectmen in any way?
No.
So,
It states in the act that serves at under all authorities of the Board of Selectmen. No way does town manager supersede our authority.
so the power that that town manager has comes directly from the board of selectmen and is given freely through the act.
Through what?
The-
the act.
Yes.
Through the act.
Mhm.
And that is the extent of the town manager's powers.
Correct.
That was my question, I just wanted to know.
Okay.
It's interesting, there's actually town manager act that explicitly says that in the first paragraph.
I'm going to skim ahead a little bit. If you look back on the years that you had the town manager, was there ever a situation that occurred that wasn't covered in an expeditious or comfortable way that occurred in the town? I'm not saying, that's what I'm saying is, any time a situation arose that may have been handled in a different way, or better, or worse, as a result of the town manager.
I think that depends on the person's perspective. Everybody, somebody is going to say, I think it could be done better. Somebody's going to say, I think it was done right.
Oh, okay.
So I think that's a very, that's based on perception, a person's perception. But there are definitely some things that I think could have been done differently, and there were some things I think were done right. But again, that's everybody's management style is a little different.
No, I understand. I'm just saying if there's a situation that could have been handled differently.
One thing, being the first time we had a town manager, there was an evolution of process. And through that, and I can't recall exactly what, we would adopt different policies as a result of our findings and say, you know what, we really need to set a policy so this is clear. So the board would establish a policy that would set things. And, you know, we probably, I'll pick a number, there's probably 20 different policies that don't directly, aren't in the act, but they're policies set by the board that establish processes and procedures.
So as a result, what I hear you saying is one of the things that did occur as a result of the town manager was a review of the selectmen's policies and procedures that were modified and improved as a result of having a town manager. Is that a fair assessment?
Or added.
Oh, okay, or added, clarified or added, so as a result of the town manager really improved those processes.
Chairman, may I ask a question to supplement to Mr. Holman?
Absolutely.
In listening to certain members of this committee, who I assume are expressing concerns of other townspeople, I think some concerns are that the way it used to work was that if a citizen had an issue, they'd go to the selectmen, 1 or 3 or 2, and express their feelings, and would hope that their comments would somehow be implemented or taken into consideration by the selectmen when a decision is made. That isn't the case now, because I guess they have to go talk to the town manager, and I guess the feeling is that somehow what they want to happen, whether it's a disciplinary issue, whether it's getting the tree removed in front of their home, or whatever it is, that personal attention that they thought existed before isn't there anymore. What would be your response to that?
I've sat down personally with many individuals, one-on-one, whether it be at the Coffee Bean or whether it be at their site, and walked with them. I listen to them, I tell them that I am one individual on a board. And I said that what we should do, what they could do, and I will communicate this with the town manager, is that they go to the town manager and also communicate this, and then we will discuss it as a board. But to say that we don't talk individually with the citizens is, at least on my part, absolutely wrong.
But there isn't an organized way to approach you. I mean, nobody wants, I mean, some people don't want to approach you in the Coffee Bean, so I'm curious.
No, never has been.
That's actually, Ken, I remember, for one whole term, sat in the selectman's office an hour before every meeting, open to the public. Nobody showed up.
And nobody showed up, yeah.
He showed up, but, and this street is paved.
That's a good one.
See, one of the dilemmas we have, you can talk to people and they will approach you with something, but they don't understand you can't make a decision.
Right.
You're not empowered to, it's illegal.
Yep.
So all you can say is, well, thank you very much, we'll take it under advisement, and the rest of the board will talk about it. But however, they can go to a town manager can call up DPW and say, a mailbox got plowed down, I want you to go replace it now. And then it gets done. So it's, and you know, it's like any transition. The people in Upton were used to the old relationship. Excuse me? Oh, the people were used to the old relationship, so it was hard for people to transition to a more structured form. And, you know, who knows it more than me? You know, used to call my house, now I say, don't call my house.
Right.
Hello, you want to invite me to dinner, that's great, but don't call my house and start talking about town politics. I can't get down that road. And all I have to do is slip once, and you know how social media goes.
So it's worse than that. You know as well as I do, but when I first became a selectman, people would call my wife and ask them to talk with me. So, you know, this really is much more efficient.
You had a question, I'm sorry.
No, actually, I said, my mailbox got plowed down. I said, that's who I was supposed to call when my mailbox got plowed down, the town manager?
Town manager, yes.
I would have never known that.
So can I?
Mr. Picardi answer the question?
Yeah.
So, Alan, unlike Jim, and probably more like Bob, when somebody would call me out of this chair, I would say, I'll be more than happy to listen to you, but I cannot act. I can't do anything for you, only the board can act for you. If you want immediate action, reach out to the town manager. She will do what she can. If she can't do anything, right, because of whatever circumstances there are, you're gonna have to come before the board. It'll have to be done in a public session, because we're not gonna meet with you on your porch and talk to you about your problem. You're gonna have to do it in public session, and I don't know why, but people have a fear of coming before the camera and complaining. They're happy to do it down at Coffee Bean, but they're not happy to do it in front of us. So I think that's really, we all understood that, our authority comes as an entity, the three of us, and that's where it has to be done.
I think you hit it on the head, because I know other members of this committee have expressed getting feedback from the community, and by way of example, they want to accept communications that don't even have a person's name on it. So I guess you're right, there may be people who are hesitant and want to express themselves without identifying who they are, if they even are residents of this community, who knows? But you must be right.
Let me get one point, but Alan brings up a point, then I'm going to clarify that. The only thing that was brought up is that this committee has looked at the town of Grafton. This currently has a charter commission that's enabled at the moment. They're a 43B community, so every 10 years by their charter, they're required to sit down and review their town government structure, top to bottom, left to right. For example, you go to the charter review committee website right now, and it asks you some 3 basic questions about town government, town structure.
And
So that was the question.
That, but I responded to that survey, yeah.
I'm sure
Interesting though,
appreciate your help.
interesting that it's for Grafton. How could I from Upton respond to a survey in Grafton?
I'm sure the people in Grafton.
As a side note, and I'll share this with you, I received a 3-minute message on my phone at home from an anonymous on an issue, went on and on and on. Oh, let's see, caller ID. Oh, typed in the phone number, Mendon resident. You never know.
Sure.
You never know. It was a Mendon resident, so.
So, to that point, I think it brings up a point is, and you brought up some very valid points in earlier discussions about.
Say that again, I just want to make sure that the secretary writes that down. I brought up a very valid
You
point.
brought up very valid, as always, you bring up very valid points. No, I think there's been a huge change in the dynamic of the board and the relationship with the community with the town manager. It's sort of like, and I think that has a lot to do with what's gone on in his first 7 years.
So the question I had then, whether the previous board's acting inappropriately, if they were meeting one-on-one with individuals and working side deals and not meeting as a group, that is inappropriate behavior for any board.
I don't know what you're.
Side deals.
Well, no, I'm saying.
Are you insinuating that there was side
Let me put it this way. In the old days, if somebody called you, and the mailbox was broken, you'd go help them put it up.
Right.
And there was a resident that lives in town, I won't pick on Dick Discharging, but she called him once a week and Dick had to go up her house and take out her trash. So, I mean, those days are so gone.
No,
They are so gone. I mean, we have to act like a business.
It is difficult, because like I said, I did meet with quite a few individuals. But as you know, meeting with somebody, they want one answer and one answer only.
Right.
Is that their problem is gonna get taken care of, and I'm gonna take care of it right now. And that can't happen. So if I give them an answer beyond that, then I am uncooperative, unresponsive, and unaccommodating. So I mean, but again, I take their issue and I communicate it to the town manager and ask the town manager to communicate it with the other board members that this is an issue that did come to me. Again, I work through the town manager to the other members, because that's the only way I can communicate with them on any issues that I may hear.
I think this issue comes to a point of where people don't understand how town government works. And so, as a result, they go to the wrong person to ask the wrong question. But it was aptly pointed out in the letter to the editor, which I thought was probably one of the best letters I've ever written. But very good, very good. It was an excellent letter.
Yeah, it is disappointing when you get 134 people out of 5,600 voters. And that's something we deal with, you probably have the same experience. You try and disseminate information, you try and make it public. The website is accessible to everybody. The resources are there. You can't force people to do what they just aren't motivated to do. And, it is what it is. And it's not just us. It's endemic throughout society. And it's unfortunate. So we'll keep trying to educate them and give them as much information as possible. There is nothing that we do other than executive sessions which are protecting the rights of individuals, that is not public record.
This has been a standing question when you were a selectman, when I was a selectman, when you were a selectman. How do you inform the voters on what's going on? What can we do to get the message out? That's a constant question. And it's a question that the selectmen have wrestled around with for years.
So I'm gonna finish up with me with a couple questions, and I think, like you said, as you can see from the dialogue, this committee is very supportive of the Town Manager Act. The focus has been what can be done better, what can be improved upon. I'm a little disappointed in the dialogue that nothing popped out tonight of that specifically. There's got to be something, because like you said, you don't.
I have suggested strengthen the personnel relationship.
That's right.
Yeah, reasonable.
I hear you and I respect what you're saying. I think we probably haven't identified, maybe we should try and get your instances of where policies, as the process has moved forward, we've adopted policies that have not changed the act because the legislature has to do that, but when we change policy, it enhances the process and the interaction between the board and the citizens. And I'm trying to think of some, there was one just the other day that we did. But those are for the benefit of the citizenry and the process.
So I can bring up an improvement. So I don't recall if Jim was on the board at the time, but
If it was something good, I was.
it was not.
Okay.
We made a decision about how to regulate the use of the town common. And it was a horrible mistake. And I remember the manager saying to us, "You sure you're going to do that?"
Yes, I was on the board, by the way.
Yeah, and all three of us said, yes, we want to protect common, and we think, we don't want to slight anybody, so we'll just stop use of it altogether. Went over like a lead balloon, right? It was terrible, terrible decision.
My first year.
So we learned from that, and we created a policy and a practice. So we clearly define that, so new board members and any new manager would know, this is the procedure, this is how you should do it. We had plenty of dialogue about that, and we created a policy. And I think that's, again, it's not part of the act, but it was a self-improvement process that we did.
You learn by your mistakes,
so
you learn by issues.
I would encourage this committee, reach out to the office and find out what our policies
So
are.
there's an example of something that you guys just talked about, something we learned about mistake, but where is it memorialized in our town structure and town government? It's not.
Where is what?
Where is it memorialized
Where's
and
it
how we
documented?
change things, how we document it, how do we have the feedback?
Well, I mean,
Hold on for a second. So
Yeah.
my question was, I'm going to kind of roll back to a bigger point. One of the things that's been great with this committee is we were able to pull together all the documentation, thanks for the help of Debbie and others downstairs in the office, about the changes that was on the committee, where we changed the town manager. And there's to a town manager structure from a board of selectmen only structure. And it was very clear we did it quickly as a community. I think there was a reason for it, for wherever that may be at the time. One of the things that we did as a committee that we differed from the two town managers that gave testimony to that committee was they said the best way to change town government would have been to do a charter. What's the, and I know that Bob's clearly got an opinion on this because he's been around long enough and looked at things long enough. Was that an example of, and I guess I bring that as a wind-up because when you brought the town manager in, we really changed the role and behavior, and Jim, I'm one of the people that, because I was a friend with you before you became a board of selectmen, did approach you, and
And
I had many,
you and I had many conversations in the
Correct.
booth at the coffee bean.
and one of the biggest, longest conversations I always had with him was, how do you feel the role of the board of selectmen has been changing with the town manager act? And what should it be different? So I heard tonight, and I think if we all sat up and did an org chart of the community, I think we'd all come up with a little different version of the org chart. Whereas I look at a charter or some of the communities that did that, they created an org chart. In most cases, boards and committees report directly to the board of selectmen, and others report directly to the town, like town departments, and employees report to the town manager. So the other part that I know I've had a discussion with previous selectman, Brochu was, and he was very candid and helpful in many of the conversations, is do we have this role and responsibility having a lot of stuff in it? And I think I kind of get a sense that I understand all the things we just went through, but have we set this position up to the point where there's so much to be done, especially with the growing and changing needs of the community and what's going on. Is there too much on that person's plate through the Town Manager Act?
I don't think so. I think, again, you work as a team.
There is a lot on the plate. You talk about a charter. To do a charter, first of all, it's a different process than what people are looking at. To do a charter, every charter I've ever seen has the town manager, and they will restructure, like in many charters, the Board of Selectmen appoint the assessors. The Board of Selectmen appoint Board of Health. It's entirely different. It's a whole revision of government. But in all of them, the town manager is cited with basically the act listed in there. You'll see it. You'll go down and say, oh, that's the same thing. But to say I would say the town manager is very busy. I commend the gentleman that we have now. He's hired on a part-time basis and he's working full-time hours. I think, honestly, there is be room for Upton to move forward in other areas. HR, part-time or full-time HR, finance director. There are so many areas now where our budget is getting sizable enough that we could use somebody that does nothing but look at the finances. So yes, there is room to expand and break off some of those responsibilities. Are we ready for it now? I don't think the voters would be, but town manager wears a lot of hats. And it clearly states in the job description town manager that the hours are basically unlimited and they cannot hold another job. They're obligated only to the town of Upton. There are all these restrictions because common sense says that a 55, 60-hour week is not abnormal. It's more the norm. So, yeah.
Really than a superintendent.
I mean, what?
There was no small issue in
No
Upton.
different than a superintendent.
Right.
Correct. And would I like to enhance the role with a full-time this or a full-time? Yeah, of course. But, you know, it was kind of like I was explaining the other day. If you take, I got to be careful, but town of Upton has 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. The end result is 11% of our budget can be played with. The rest of it's all obligated. So we've got 11% of $22 million that we have flexibility to move in. Now that means you could hire more, lay off more, but it's within that 11%. So if you went out and hired an individual at $75,000, $80,000, you've just taken that out of that 11%. And where you're going to get it? You're going to have to lay off somebody else. You're going to have to cut services. So it's a dilemma. And there's no room at this point for any override. So it's financially problematic.
So the span
Love
of
to
control.
see it.
So you'd like to see a reduction in the span of control of the town manager if you could change something.
Oh, I don't say.
When I say reduction in the span of control.
Enhance our services with additional personnel, like more. That'd be a better way of saying.
Okay.
No, that is the span of control.
Just,
Yeah,
instead,
but-
yeah, right,
yeah.
but
And how that's done, I don't know. Maybe we still.
and that's not a function of the act. It's a function of organizationally changing some responsibilities.
If I'd pose it this
personnel
way,
burden.
I'd answer it with a question. Go to the next town meeting and say you want $120,000 for a finance director and see what your response
No, I
is.
understand completely. Thank you. Which leads to one other, I guess, the final point that was also something that I've served on boards and committees since I've been in town. I, of course, work in the fire department, and I enjoy doing that. Actually, in my previous service, and I've given this feedback to Selectman Brochu in the past, is you didn't know who you were answering to, whether you're answering to the town manager or the Board of Selectmen. I always knew I was working at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen, and that's important. So I guess the question is there's an example of, to your point, we're in a community where our financial constraints are still not going to let us do a lot of ideal things that would be great to do, hire this, hire that, pay for this, pay for that, because the money's not there. I appreciate that fairly straightforward and eloquent example of, you know, what the constraints are out there. So is there a way, like in the board and committee process, with because the way the current act is structured, it has pretty much the manager coordinating all boards and committees, where some communities are much clearer about boards and committees report directly to the Board of Selectmen, and it's very clear of that line of authority. And it'll say in a few instances, like I'll give the example of West Newbury, where it tells West Newbury between the administrative and financial responsibilities of their incoming manager, where they're responsible for interfacing with the board or committee, and where the rest of it still rests within the board of selectmen. So I guess those are some of the questions that I think, when I look at span of control, the number of people and the responsibilities we put on a single individual, I would like to see a situation where you have a little more insight to the bigger picture. And the reason I brought up the bigger example of looking back at the town manager, and I had never looked and read through all those meeting minutes, is we did it, that committee did a good job in what they put together, but it wasn't a focus on the entire.
That's what committee you're referring to?
The town manager assessment review.
Search committee, that's assessment.
The assessment committee, the committee that put together that recommends to do a town manager. Back in 2007.
I'll only answer your question with, I've served for 30 years, almost 30. I've gone through the trials and tribulations of trying to do it with the Board of Selectmen. I often joke with people, I was off the board for a year and a half, and in that year and a half, my company promoted me and asked me what motivated me. And the difference was I wasn't stealing time to be down here. It's unreasonable to ask elected officials to give that amount of time. With a town manager, a member of the Board of Selectmen now is probably giving 6 hours a week, maybe, sometimes giving weeks more. That's
I did a lot more than that, Bob.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm going on the blind side. That's with a town manager. You can imagine.
On average.
So the Board of Selectmen does not want any responsibility transferred back to them. And it was a difficult thing for some people when the Board of Selectmen had to relinquish authority that they had for years. And it was hard for some people to give it up, but it was the right thing to do. And when we did that, we not only did that, we cut our salaries, we did what was the right thing to do. And I think the system works. We talk about the town's financial structure. We don't have a lot of money, but we're financially very solvent. Our bond rating keeps going up, our assessments, financially, we're in great shape. For all that people want, they love this town, they want to stay here. So I think you need a strong town manager government where the processes are being taken care of. My fear is, and again, I don't mean to demean anybody, but we had an election this year where it came to 2 weeks before or less before papers had to be turned in, and nobody was going to run for selectman. And that's what's happening to our society. People aren't willing to make the commitment that's going to be hours and hours and hours and hours, and some of the criticisms that go with it. You lose a lot of friends because you make decisions they don't like, and that's unfortunate. Anybody that's been there knows it.
Mr. Chairman, I've served on lots of committees, and I've never experienced a problem where I felt that the town manager was neglecting the committee or not helping the committee. I mean, I've never experienced that. So to say that that's a shortcoming of the current act, I don't
No, I think I brought it, I bring the point up because I kind of was taking off of what Selectman Brochu had said to me in the past, was a tremendous amount of responsibilities and time. I guess the question comes down to, and like I said, in my case, probably because there was not a need to interface with our committee from that manager or the Board of Selectmen standpoint. I guess one of the things that's interesting from you look at volunteerism, how much volunteerism you get and how much we get out of people is really a big basis on the environment that's created to have volunteerism.
Again, I keep using the word teamwork, where the town manager works with the board and truly as a team. And there were many times when I was on the board with my fellow members that we could see that the town manager was, I don't want to say, just ready to implode, just because they had so much on their plate, and then we would say, what can we do to help? And so again, it's a two-way street where, we want to help them, do their job better, and which is our job also. We work as a team, so we all want to succeed. And again, communication back from the town manager, I think, especially with a new town manager coming on board, that individual, in times to come when they understand the job better, may say in a year, maybe say in 2 years, that I think we're kind of weak in this particular, that I don't think I'm dedicating enough time with respect to this scope of work, so, do we want to rethink about, changing that responsibility or getting assistance with that? So, again, I think it's communication on both sides, and, with respect to, you said, are they over their head, or, is it too much responsibility? Well, I don't think so, but possibly with new growth and the growth that's happening in Upton, slow but sure, there may come a time like that. So, but again, you look at it both ways.
Chair, could I just wanted to read one statement from the minutes from last week. And I think this sort of summarize a little bit of just sort of citizen fear. Just in Mr. Doherty, Selectman Doherty said, he mentioned his disapproval of how a prior employee discipline incident was handled as an example, and he stated the Board of Selectmen was not notified by the town manager prior to action that was taken. So I think it does come down to communication. So it's what is the order? We're always being consulted. The Board of Selectmen always being consulted. Here he's saying we actually weren't consulted. Something was done, we weren't consulted. So is it town manager, Board of Selectmen? You gentlemen are saying Board of Selectmen, we have consulted on everything. Well, not everything. So, and I know stuff slips through the cracks, but that's sort of, I'm not sure, what's your response to that, I guess, would be the question.
I can't speak for Selectman Doherty. You're quoting him. I don't remember him saying that, but obviously it's a focus point to you because you keep bringing this back. So I'll repeat it again. The town manager for any discipline and authority and personnel actions needs to go through the Board of Selectmen. I recall there was one instance when, I won't even go there. There was one instance where communication could have had a lapse, but it wasn't intent. And that's all I can say. There has never, in my time in the last 7 years, been a discipline or an action that I have not been briefed on. None. And I'm saying it publicly. And I won't speak for my colleagues, but none. So I was aware of all of it. So we can't go on the assumption that because one time somebody said that the Board of Selectmen didn't have authority. Anybody that knows me knows I would be impossible to work with if I didn't keep the authority I was elected to serve with. And he's mocking me. But I'm known to be a little outspoken.
I guess the question we said, just to summarize, and we'll wrap up the discussion and dialogue. I think I go back to the situation of the town's got limited resources. Are we looking at, this is an opportunity to change. In case of a 43B committee, they do this every 7 to 10 years. And I think this is an example of where, part of this effort is Upton going to just seal the deal for the next 10 or 20 years, or we're just going to not change, or we can evolve? I guess that's my bigger question. I know Al was mocking the fact that he's voting on Grafton's website, and, I guess the point is as a policy-making body, do you feel like we're on the best track?
Yes.
To get the best results?
Yes.
When we have a decline of citizen involvement and other things?
Well, at this point, we have the highest involvement of volunteers on boards and commissions we've had in a long time, so we're fortunate for that. I told you I'm direct. You keep focusing on the charter. This commission's to look at the Town Manager Act, not a charter. You've used charter a number of times. If you go into a charter, by law, there's a long, long process. You have to go out and elect a charter commission. You've got a period, yes, so you're well familiar with that. That's something that the town would have to look at down the road. It would be a process that would need to be set up. And before you get a charter through, the Home Rule Initiative, everything's got to be done. It's a very, very lengthy process. This board, this commission, your intent, your mission statement is to review the Town Manager Act.
Absolutely.
Selectman Fleming, could you maybe elaborate on what you're talking about, if we were going to recommend to change the charter or what have you, what that process is? Maybe not everybody's familiar with it.
Well, first of all, in order to drive a charter commission, you need to have a vote to support it, and that has to go to vote. Once that charter commission vote is done, then you establish a charter commission by election. Then that charter commission meets. They have a timeline where they're obligated to perform certain functions. I believe it is 18 months. They then come back to the voters and say, okay, they announce and they disseminate the information to the voters and the general public. Then it goes to town meeting and ballot approval. If both are accepted, the charter is then accepted. Then it goes to the legislature, who needs to adopt it as a home rule initiative in the charter report. So it's quite a process. And in order to do it right, I'm being candid again, you darn well better get the right people elected to charter commission. Because if you get 5 people that say have an agenda, you're not going to get anything accomplished. It's got to be the right process. And the voters have to elect those charter members. And, you know, charters are being done. More times than not, it's a larger town government than us because of our size. I mean, we're still at 8,000 people. And, you know, most charters will clearly delineate the responsibilities. It will say, the Board of Assessors shall serve to the Board of Selectmen, the Board of Assessors, and then it will list all the responsibilities of the Board of Assessors. So it's probably a 43, 50 some odd page document.
So from our standpoint, to follow up, I agree completely with what you said. You pretty much agree. Once you have an elected commission, you have 18 months to create a charter, and then you essentially have a town meeting to adopt it. It requires you to look at everything. Essentially gets you out of the general laws once you have one single document that runs your government. I'm not advocating for it. I just wanted to have a dialogue and understanding of why at the time. Especially when the 2 town managers that gave testimony to our committee back then said that would have been the best way to organize our government. I do understand what you're saying from that standpoint. I guess the question is in our case, we don't, when we did a special acts, we're not required to go forward and revisit it every so many years like a charter commission is required to. And I just, you know, my own personal opinion is I think that the world is changing so quickly around us that I mean, like I said, we could be done with this discussion, which is fine. That's fine with me, but I think we're in a situation where things are changing dramatically.
I think it would be in the role of responsibility should this board recommend a 5-year review be put into the town bylaws, that, because any change you want to make to this act has to go back to the legislature. So, but if you said, you know, we want to have a bylaw in town that says every 5 years, town manager act shall be reviewed, well, that's within the parameters, I would think.
So, like I said, I think from our standpoint, dialogue, we're looking for constructive things. Like I said, I don't think there's anybody on this committee that's interested at all in trying to go down any bunny holes and try to focus on things that aren't going to help move the committee forward. I think the dialogue we've had as a group to date has covered lots of different grounds. We found out that in the situation with the way the Town Manager Act is, it essentially touches the entire community the way it's structured, because it is essentially the entire, you know, running the entire day operations of the community.
If I may, I would like to thank all the members of this for giving your time and your commitment to it. It's not often you get thank yous.
Volunteers.
On behalf of the town, thank you. Many of you have a great deal of experience. There's one individual that's on about 5 different committees and boards, and he's always raising his hand.
He's still practicing,
He knows
he's not
who
getting
he
it
is,
right yet.
But, well, I compliment it, because a compliment to you is you're always very objective. We've served on a
You should
number.
be the recruiting coordinator for boards and committees.
But no, thank you, because it's, you know, it's never easy. Never easy.
Like you said, this was our first night to have a dialogue. We're going to go back and have deliberation, I think, as a committee.
One last thing, I would ask to consideration, maybe consider speaking with the present town manager. He's got 30 years of experience, and he's going to be totally objective. He has no reason not to be. You know, 12 years and less. He's got longevity in towns and a broad spectrum of experiences. So you might want to, that's all I can.
The last thing I want to bring up too is, like I said, a workshop. You had mentioned, I think earlier on when this committee got formed, that it would make sense for this committee to have a workshop session as we look at specifics of things to consider to improve and change. What are your thoughts on doing that? Especially since we have 2 newer and younger selectmen that are coming in I think there's some value from a standpoint of having that workshop session, because I think, you know, you guys have brought up many examples tonight where institutional knowledge, you know, is imparted with you as you leave. Your ability to impress it back on the community will go through by having that session to deliberate a little more of the details as opposed to just a televised hearing.
I'm not clear on what you mean by workshop.
And back in February, when the board had said we should consider forming a committee.
Oh, just sit down and just
having a workshop where there's a discussion about the nitty gritty of.
If more than one selectman, actually you'd have to post.
We would post, I mean, at this point, but I think it would be a format that would be workshop oriented. I know the other two stuff are not that.
Feel free to, I can answer individually, but not for the board if you send an email or something. Feel free. My time's kind of precious.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oops.
Yeah, in the last meeting, we talked about sending emails.
No, but what I'm saying is we should have a note here, just if everybody has anything to add to it or.
That's at the bottom, any items.
No, what I'm saying, but you have an agenda, it would be worthwhile to vote for, let's say, accept the agenda as something.
So the next item, we've covered items 3 to 4. The next item was a discussion of future meeting dates and committee, 3-month work plan.
I'm book solid.
Pardon?
I'm book solid.
Your book's solid.
Period.
Very, like 3 months.
His book's solid.
Summer starts in 2 days, I fully expect him
You're not working with
I got the rest of the month off,
It's a month off.
except for 2 days. I gotta work 2 days.
Do we have another meeting booked already?
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
Do we have another meeting booked currently? I don't think we do. We were going to discuss it.
No, we
'cause-
didn't.
Oh,
There was
okay.
an email.
Yeah, 'cause we're all- We weren't here.
Thank you.
May I approach the
Yes. I couldn't get to from the last one. So I put out an email about essentially a work plan for the summer to look at the details of that. And like you said, I think the goal is to get things done, to get through essentially having a work session with the selectmen, as we've talked about, as we've heard from 2. I think between the 2 that we've heard so far, we've heard a little difference in some ideas and opinions. We haven't heard from one of the selectmen that apparently is the original audience.
Easy to find out where the office is.
Yeah, he's so new.
So anyways, I put out some dates for just Thursdays, Tuesday nights and other Tuesday nights. Not to move any committee meetings around. We probably 1 or 2 work sessions. I think from, my standpoint, I wouldn't have anything less than just the 1 work session, I think, is appropriate.
So what are we talking about? What date?
See, Thursday night, so the next meeting would be on the 29th,
Yep.
texting.
And from a work plan standpoint, it was gonna be a point-by-point review of the act. And I think it's an ambition and a charge. We've heard testimony from two former selectmen and current selectmen. So our goal would be to go through and just do that and benchmark against at least the 2 reference documents we have already. And also get to a situation where we can look forward at evaluating any potential changes. We heard one tonight from Selectman Fleming about essentially considering putting in a review period every so many years as part of our act.
It's not part of the act, that's a bylaw.
No, but he's
Bylaw
saying,
change.
he's saying
Put it,
making a
he's-
change.
yeah, put
to-
it in the act.
Bylaw.
So the question whether it's a bylaw or something in the act, I
Right.
think,
It doesn't make sense to make that part of the act because it would take 2 years at least for it to take effect. So a bylaw can happen
He said that, yeah,
relatively
make
instantaneously. So
a-
what's
create a
the-
bylaw. to-
sure, like you said, at this point, I think I would want to have a work session and understand the mechanics of that and how that would work.
Okay.
Well, we do the same thing for the
So,
personnel bylaw.
29?
Personnel, we have a review every 5 years, evaluate, or is it 10 years, I can't remember which. We can do the same thing with the bylaw for this, review this every 5 years or 10 years.
The thing that I'm confused about is, we've heard from 4 selectmen so far, and so far there's very little that they are suggesting, if anything, needs to be changed. I think we need to hear from department heads next.
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think it's this committee's responsibility to start amending the act without feedback from
I appreciate
department
that.
heads.
We did talk about that. We had the discussion with the department heads.
Right, and if the.
And I think we heard a suggestion about that, Mr. Reed, our current
Yep.
regent, is an
Current
excellent
town manager,
person
yep.
to listen from because it was a.
Right, so we
his
need to,
objective 6
we need
months
to
long.
invite, we need to have a list of who are all the department heads that are under the current Town Manager Act, excluding the library trustees and the Board of Health. And we need to invite the department managers from those boards, from those departments to come tell us what they like or don't like about the current act.
I think what would be most helpful is to extend an offer to the prior, or an invitation, I think is a better way to characterize it, the prior town manager, and see whether or not that person has input regarding what that person felt worked and didn't work. I hope that that person would be willing to come here and to express her experiences. But I think at least an offer should be extended to that person, because just like these 3 members are the most experienced on what worked and didn't work from the hiring side, that person would be from the performance side.
I would agree, because some of the things I had brought up would have a lot to do with what I believe that the individual had a lot on their plate, maybe whether that was right or wrong. You hear from them directly.
And she'd be more knowledgeable on how much work there is for the town manager, if there's too much, if there's, you know, she might be the one to talk to.
Sure. So, in our, going forward, and Steve, I appreciate you bringing that back up, but we did talk about that. So, setting up a meeting with interim town manager Reed, department heads, and the prior town manager, the next priority in our next set of meetings. Hopefully we can get that done in one meeting, or do you want to do that in a workshop format on Saturday, or?
Why don't we try and stay during the week? I'm not a big fan of this committee now scheduling the volume of Saturdays that I had seen in the initial proposal.
I think I had 2 in there. I just threw 2 out there just to have an alternate date and using that format. So,
I think we can accomplish that. I think we can accomplish it on a Thursday evening. I personally think Saturdays are, so it takes another hour to do what we want to do. I think we should separate the town manager, when we sit down with the town managers, both current and past town manager, from the department heads, because we might get a conflict or an uneasiness of dialogue, which would report. I also think we should, depending upon how many department heads and the size of their direct reports, I think we should invite them all, but the ones that are probably going to have the greatest dialogue with the town manager are going to be the major departments, the DPW, police department, fire department. I think are probably going to be the place where the biggest dialogue is going to occur. Not that the other department heads are not important, but I think that's where we're going to have the best understanding of how the management interacts and how it works.
Any other discussion or things about that specifically?
try and target the town managers for the next meeting, which I would say would be the 29th, which is this month.
Yep, we have basically, the Thursdays we had out were essentially one more in June, the 29th, and then we had the 13th, 27th, 14th, and 28th. So those are the ones that were in the email, and like I said, we held off on.
What were the August dates?
Oh, the 27th.
Yeah, 6/29, 7/13, 7/27, 9/14.
8/14, you mean?
I would
8/14 or 9?
Why are we skipping
sorry.
August?
I think you're skipping August.
I
You
did
don't mean to
skip
do that.
August, I-
So why don't we try 8/10 and 8/24? Now, that may conflict with the Board of Health meetings, and so I'll have to mount that against the Board of Health meetings to make sure that we.
Well, the majority of the Board of Health is right here, so we can't do that.
13th,
Well, that's right.
27th,
You
I
have what
won't,
you
I
schedule,
won't be
actually.
here.
Spoken from the Board of Health.
Is that?
Spoken from the Board of Health.
That's right.
You will not meet me.
One second, is this an incident? That's an incident, oh, then I'm incident command.
We didn't post this one.
I wouldn't be here the 27th.
So 6/29, everybody good for 6/29?
Yes.
Yep. Why don't we schedule two at a shot? Why don't we schedule 7/13?
And 7/13?
Is everybody good with that one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't be here. I have a shoot out in Hubbardston, so.
Who are you gonna shoot? Is it Fatal or is it?
No, this is with Ron Burton. Actually, I think it's gonna be mayor. I think it's gonna be the mayor. We'll be out there in Hubbardston, so. But it's an evening at dinner event, so.
Well, as long as we have
But that's fine.
5 of us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's 9 of us.
All we have to have is a quorum, not a quorum.
So, in the next meeting, in 6/29, if the committee sees fit, I'd like to have
Town managers.
the two town managers, the interim and the previous town manager.
Yes.
7/13.
The new town manager be here that date?
I think it's 20
He's here, I think he's here through the end of July.
Yeah.
But I don't know
July
if he's here, he's
asking
usually
about
here on
the new
Thursday.
town manager, I don't think the new town
Yep.
manager's gonna go.
Yeah, the new town manager may or may not be, but his input is important, so the
No.
current town manager,
Yeah.
acting town manager, I should say. We should send him a formal invitation to, in writing.
Are you gonna do that, Dan?
I will.
And the past town manager could give us the workload, so that's
Yeah.
important. That was one of the questions tonight.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe worth also putting in the invitation what we're expecting from them.
Good idea.
I would ask the committee members, and I think we could, like to get some feedback from folks about, that expectation. I kind of kept tonight's discussion specifically to the act, and as a first point to see what would come up in the discussion about the act, and I think we got 1 or 2 small items tonight. I think when we talk to managers, I think there's a much more broader set of questions, and I really don't want the committee to get all over the place with regard to that, so I guess I do actually look over to Debbie to my left, who's a human resources professional, who can help us kind of, navigate some of the ideas in terms of, how to focus those questions as it would relate to.
To me, it's the same exact
Same
question.
question.
It
that
is,
was
what
asked.
works and what
Yeah, I
doesn't
think so.
work.
What
That's
works and
really
what's
what
not
it
working.
is. There's no secret to it.
Yeah, I mean, and, to me, I'm a firm believer in if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So unless I hear something where somebody says, this is definitely broken and here's why.
The only problem with an overly broad question is that the person's, it's a lot. You're saying, is there anything in the world you'd like to change? And they're like, I don't know. So sometimes
Well, they should
giving
know
some,
that- they should know
they
that
should be
coming in.
prepared, yes. But I mean, I don't know, maybe they did prepare and there wasn't anything, but.
At the level of the level of management that we're talking about a town manager who has managed the town, who has an expectation of high level of
Yeah.
skill set. They should have already thought this through, to Steve's point. This is.
How about this, in the invitation, however you
should
express it in
be
writing or
prepared
by
to.
oral,
Right.
you say to them, we're going to ask you what works in your opinion and what doesn't work. That way, they won't be surprised
Right.
by a
They'll be
question, because otherwise, I don't know why they think they're coming here.
I
So,
think the point being is I think, to your point, to try to get some feedback on what, to Steve's point, what could be fixed or made better?
If anything.
They should think about it and.
What works and doesn't work.
I don't think we need to talk about the workload. I mean, this position is highly paid. So the compensation based on the workload, I don't think we need to assess the workload. We know what the workload is, it's right here in the Town Manager Act, every single thing they do. So, and it's a nice package. So
Correct.
I say we.
Correct on your part.
Yeah.
But the workload, we don't know anything about the workload. How many hours do you put in? Do you put in 40 a week? Do you put in 80 a week? I'd like to know that.
For the amount of money that they pay, they should be putting in 80
Well, I don't care about
hours a
what
week.
money they're making.
Let's go-
They're
let's go-
making plenty of money, yes.
Let's go after the point.
Police officers make
We
money.
make too much money.
Too much money. No,
It's nice benefits.
whatever they're paid, you hired them and you're giving them that money, whatever hours they work. That's correct. But there's a point where if there's 80 hours a week, you won't be able to do the job correctly.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, Richard,
Yes.
I think Mr. Holman could do something, it might take him, I don't know, 40 hours. I might do something, it might take me 2 hours. We're all much more, we're different in what, it's a great example, right? We are different in our efficiencies.
Quick, buddy.
However, you still have the right to ask, I believe, any question that you really want to ask. So if that's important to you, I'm sure that you'll ask that question.
I think to your point, I want to know what didn't get done because there wasn't no more time in the week. We all know that if you're going past 60, your effectiveness to be a good leader, manager, will plummet no matter who you are. So I think that was part of the discussion about the expensiveness, and I think there will be some insightful.
I think there's another way, Richard, of asking what I think you're asking. It might be, do you feel that the responsibilities for this position are too great for one person? Maybe that's the way to ask that question.
So what I'll do is I'll craft a first draft, and I'm going to have Al as the vice chairman review it, and we'll go back and forth, and if the committee sees fit, the two of us will agree on what the letter should say and how we should craft,
Sounds like a plan.
and we'll go from there.
It shouldn't be more than a paragraph long.
Oh, yeah.
You'll lose them after
Long
a
time.
paragraph.
Okay, let's get back to the agenda. So we're gonna stick to just having some dates for grade 629, 713. Two more dates, I'm not going further at the moment. We're going to hear from the two town managers next.
Should we also send an invitation to the department heads?
I think we're
Advance
gonna put
warning?
that off to the next.
No, but advance one, like, we're gonna talk to these people on the 29th. In the same scheme, should we send out, I mean, we can give them 3 weeks' notice, 4 weeks' notice.
Until we
Especially
get a
with it being
date,
in the
until we get a
summertime.
date, what I would like to bring at the next meeting is bring forward some ideas on, what we want to gauge that discussion and dialogue with. 'Cause I think we're doing something that hasn't been done, which is we're creating a dialogue about the act and how it's impact that kind of. So if you don't see a problem, that's how we have to have.
I was just thinking, give it much, especially the summertime, as much advance notice as possible, that we don't end up with the same situation that we had with the
So-
selectmen.
Yeah, so let's talk, I think we did that because the month of June was not fun trying to coordinate. So 8/10 and 8/24 are the two dates that work for everybody? For August, if I give them a primer, that would be one of those two nights?
I was thinking July, but. okay.
Yeah, we're gonna meet with the town
I'm sorry,
managers.
July.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
the 13th and the 27th.
Right.
So you want to do the 27th? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah, I won't be here.
Okay, and so we're going to probably always just
So
each committee member.
7/27.
Yep.
7/27, no, that's
So we-
7/17.
We have 629 that we're gonna ask the previous and acting town manager.
Correct.
July 13th,
Department heads.
Department heads.
Department heads on the 13th.
Thank you.
And also the 27th, is that?
What
Yeah,
about-
when we do the 27th, because I can tell you now, just from the summertime coordinating, we're gonna have to be willing to split it.
Yes,
Split it.
I would say that
Okay,
either
so,
the 13th
So
or
the
the
17th
27th.
and 27th, we'll do the department heads, coordinating boards and committees that we think
13th and 27th.
that should be spoken to.
So 13th
Hear
is,
from.
That
So
way
did we
they go on
agree on-
vacation, because that's
Right.
Yeah.
possible.
Did you also agree on 8:10 and 8:24, or are we just,
Anybody see a problem with 8:10, 8:24?
8:24? No, right?
I may not be here on the 24th. If not, then I'll do a fine job. Okay.
Gee, it'll be the first time I've ever done it.
I think BBT will be back.
that's depressing.
So what I'll do
No,
is,
BBT will be back in
probably
school.
those two dates for,
Starts early.
so the 27th is gonna be the dates for the department heads. Same thing, put together some correspondence, I'll run it past Al, and then we'll bring that correspondence then.
the
Because
13th
I
and
do want to hear,
27th?
yes,
13th and 27th, okay.
because I want to hear what feedback, because I think we had a good group of folks that would have different perspectives and ideas of how to craft that discussion. I don't think we want to limit anything that is brought up by anybody that comes in front of the committee, but I think, in a matter of time and being efficient, we
Well,
want
I
to try
think
to.
the questions will be pretty much the same. I think there won't be any difference in the questions. This will be the responses.
Sure.
Because instead of looking down at the town manager and their responsibilities, we'll be asking people who are looking up, so that visibility will be entirely different.
All right, so we're holding off on 8:10 and 8:24?
Those are just dates for holding.
Okay. Okay.
Air traffic control.
Next item is opportunity for public to address the committee.
Here.
I know, we just have to.
Just
I gotta go home.
this is a public reference.
I don't have all my.
Deb Lazar's,
Really good
oh, sorry.
opening the public,
yeah.
which I'm not opposed to, really needs to be voted on by the committee, and then the chair has to authorize it, just as a point of reference.
We did that last meeting.
Oh, this is another meeting. Do it at every meeting.
every meeting.
Do it at every meeting.
Okay.
Not as a point of,
Anybody see any area of concern about the public addressing the committee?
No. Nope, no.
Go ahead.
Hi, Deb Lazar's, 10 Farrar Road. So two thoughts that just came listening to this meeting was, one, again, being, I feel like a pretty involved citizen in maybe not being able to come to many meetings, but I am a voter and I vote every time I can. It is really hard, as busy as our crazy lives are, to stay informed all the time. So I don't think the intent, at least I can speak for myself as a concerned citizen, is to like, oh, I don't care because I'm not showing up. I do care. So there may be ways that we could suggest going forward to the town manager or whatever, suggestions of maybe opening communication. And one, you kind of sparked a thing of bringing up the superintendent. So having children in the school system, one of the things that's been super helpful, because I can't go to any of those meetings, is a blog, like a little update. They do an update once a week or once a month that just kind of says, this is what's going on in town. And then I have the choice of when I read it. I don't have to attend a meeting, but it's like just kind of a, I don't know, that was just one thought that came to my head that would be a really easy way to communicate to the public.
Do you mean about what the committee is doing or about town government in general?
Going forward, the town manager you're
I'm
talking
talking
about.
about the town manager.
Going
like
forward.
when we're talking about what they were kind of saying as far as opening that communication, and maybe some of the citizens aren't feeling like they have a real easy way. I know when I go to the town website, there's a couple things are on, but honestly, when I went, the huge town vote wasn't even on there. It wasn't like, vote today, that was not even on there. So there's certain things that are very, I think, driving by that big post that's outside, I think on our day of voting had, come meet your candidates tonight, which was in April. And it's like,
just basic things to me that I passed by that like 100 times. If those were updated or you had a blog or something to go to on a regular basis, I wouldn't have to search the website
Right.
for the details. That's all, just a suggestion.
So we talked, actually, our last meeting, we had a current selectman here, and I think I suggested that maybe the chairman of this Board of Selectmen should start doing once a month, maybe in the town crier, if they could find an area in it, what's going on in town. But also, as Steve pointed out, if you go to the town website, you get some sense of what's going on in town. But it's still going to be up to the citizens to take the time to
Correct.
read it and educate themselves.
Exactly.
That's the reality
The
of
town
it.
manager publishes a report that is public information, and it's presented at every selectman's meeting.
And it's, by the way, it's sent to every department head and everybody gets copies.
So if you wanted to read that, all you would need to do is go to the town website, click on the Board of Selectmen's meeting, and in the agenda, there's an item for the town manager's report, and you can read the report.
Town manager does a report every week.
It's every week.
I never knew that.
Okay.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
but nobody knows that.
Yeah.
Two people do.
Yeah.
Maybe we
Some
can,
people know that.
maybe we can
Yeah.
copy and paste that.
Everybody doesn't know that.
No,
And
I guess
that's
just
going
a-
I can write it
I
down.
had
I
had no idea.
Just a friendly reminder,
That's
maybe.
why we
I
have
guess
to
for
wait
you
for
who
the
have
website.
been
Here's
involved
Hold on, hold on.
in politics
We
and.
should form a committee to go door to door and let everybody know what's going on.
No, I mean, in all silliness aside, I just feel like you guys are very experienced. You're on many committees. You're very, very informed. I am
That's a
probably the
smart aleck all the
Joe
time.
citizen who, like I said last time, is finally getting a courage to speak. And so I am not up to speed 100%. I have 100 gazillion things going on too. So that was one. And the other is I don't feel like as a citizen that I have direct access to my Board of Selectmen. If I want to send, if let's say I have a hard time with something, I've approached the town manager, I'm not feeling like I'm heard or whatever, I can't, when I go on, I can't even email the Board of Selectmen. I have to go
BOS.
through the secretary.
You can't
I
email
have to
the
email
BOS?
Sandra.
Goes to Sandra.
It goes to Sandra.
No,
the
actually,
town
you're right.
manager.
There is no
There
access.
There's no access, so-
to the board,
It
the
has
people
been
that I
Went to
elect.
them.
That's
Could
just-
I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I think you
That's
should contact the Board of Selectmen or go to the next meeting.
Yeah.
They have the same opportunity like we have now of comments from the public.
Yeah.
And I think you're sharing your, how comfortable you are or trying to communicate with them. Could they maybe arrange some private meeting? You heard Mr. Picard talk about how he used to wait an hour before each meeting
Yeah.
if somebody wanted to come in. I used to go on Saturday mornings. Honestly, nobody showed up.
Right.
So, and we've talked before, I'm sure Al, I'm sure Richard also presented themselves within the community. I mean, hopefully you'll feel comfortable enough to approach the people that you voted for or voted against who are now running the town. But it's up to you really to push yourself and reach out to them. I gotta imagine they'll at least give you an audience and you can express what your concerns are.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is, should be kind of 6 or 7. Other agendas not reasonably anticipated by chairperson. I have no other items specifically, so I'm looking for item number 6 to be motion.
I'll do a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
I'll third.
Anybody gonna abstain?
Aye.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye.